Even the most intense and dramatic movies can't keep actors from goofing around, which means plenty of blooper reels and blown takes for fans to enjoy during the credits or as a bonus on home video. But sometimes a spur-of-the-moment decision, mistake, or even an injury can be too good to cut. Make sure you comment below as you watch, because we want to know what you guys think of our videos. Here are Screen Rant's 10 movie bloopers that made it to the final cut. Django Unchained. Quentin Tarantino's Western was one of only a few movies to put Leonardo DiCaprio in a supporting role. But the actor found a surprising way to prove he's always a superstar. During the movie's climactic dinner scene, Calvin Candy's anger explodes, resulting in broken bone, smashed glass, and blood. The injury was completely unplanned. Other actors were clearly stunned as the director and actor kept on rolling. You can even watch as DiCaprio picks the glass from his hand once his speech is over. Hopefully, the blood smeared on his co-star wasn't the real thing. Mission Impossible 2. When filming the final fight in Mission Impossible 2, Tom Cruise and his stuntman trained to make their moves as realistic as possible, and that included letting a knife swing just millimeters from his eye. But when his fellow stuntman told Cruise not to pull back on his final kick, he did it, planting his foot squarely on his partner's jaw. Director John Woo used the entire shot, including the star's clearly shocked reaction to his mistake. Zoolander. Ben Stiller's world-famous male model is known more for his looks than his smarts. But one joke concerning Derek's low IQ rose above the rest. When David Duchovny's character explains why male models make the perfect brainwashed assassins, Derek doesn't quite keep up. That moment wasn't planned. Stiller simply forgot his next line, and instead of ruining the take, repeated the question.
But why male models?
You serious? I just told you that a moment ago.
Right.
Duchovny didn't miss a beat, giving as deadpan a response as he could, delivering one of the more memorable jokes in the movie. Knocked Up. Stars Seth Rogen, Jason Segel, Jonah Hill, and Jay Baruchel open the movie with a montage of wasting time, capping the scene off with a ride on a spinning roller coaster. A ride not all of them enjoyed.
I gotta get off.
Baruchel's fear of roller coasters was so strong, he agreed to appear naked in the movie just to avoid the ride. But the director and cast pushed him to do it, meaning Segel had to appear in the flesh instead, and Baruchel's genuine terror made it into the final movie. Raiders of the Lost Ark. When Indiana Jones attempts to ambush a group of Nazis with his leading lady held prisoner, the movie's villain Belloc takes part in a surprise cameo. A fly suddenly appearing on an actor's face can usually ruin a take, but the bug disappearing implies something much worse. According to actor Paul Freeman, the effects team thought it would be funnier to erase the fly's escape, turning what could have been a blown take into an infamous moment that's impossible to miss. Midnight Cowboy. This one is quite possibly the most famous blooper in movie history. Ratso Rizzo's catchphrase in Midnight Cowboy was completely unplanned, as the crew secretly filmed actors Dustin Hoffman and Jon Voight on a New York street. A taxi nearly hit the pair of them crossing the street, but as Jon Voight watched on in surprise, Hoffman turned the blown take into not just the most well-known scene in the movie, but a line that would become even more well-known and iconic than he could have ever guessed.
Hey, I'm walking here! I'm walking here!
The Lord of the Rings. When Gandalf first arrives to visit Bilbo and Bag End, he shows how hard it can be to move through a miniature home. Actor Ian McKellen's fumbling with the chandelier was planned, but his sudden slam into a ceiling beam wasn't. His surprised shout and laugh were too good to leave out, and Peter Jackson left the mistake in the finished film. Blade Runner. Ridley Scott's sci-fi detective story made actress Daryl Hannah an up-and-coming star overnight, but her dedication to the role went beyond acting. When her character is introduced, she panics, running off and smashing the window of the parked van. The stunt wasn't planned, meaning Hannah simply slammed into the van with enough force to shatter the very real glass, and her elbow along with it. She remained in character, making sure the mistake wound up in the original film, and she wound up in surgery herself. Rain Man. Stars Tom Cruise and Dustin Hoffman were at the top of their game in this tale of dysfunctional brothers, but some unintended flatulence was to thank for one of its most famous moments. When the pair are squeezed into a phone booth, Hoffman's character takes things from bad to worse, passing some gas in the cramped space.
Uh-oh, fart.
Yeah, Charlie Babbitt, I'll hold.
Fart.
But Hoffman wasn't making it up, simply giving his co-star a heads up. Cruise took the cue to stay in character, and the rest is history.
How can you stand that?
I don't mind it.
Back to the Future Part 2. Hoverboards may have become the runaway stars of the Back to the Future series, but the futuristic gadgets also led to one of the trilogy's most disastrous stunts. When Biff's gang tries to take out Marty in 2015, they wind up smashing through a courthouse window. The risky stunt called for all three actors to fly through the glass before dropping safely below, but an error sent stuntwoman Cheryl Wheeler-Dixon slamming into a pillar instead. With the timing thrown off, she was dropped 30 feet onto the stone below. She survived the fall but sustained serious injuries. Even more shocking, the stunt was only performed once, meaning her fall can actually be seen in the finished film, thankfully cutting away a split second before impact. So what do you think of our list? Did we miss any of your favorite bloopers or happy accidents that ended up in movies? Let us know in the comments section, and don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more videos like this one.
No matter how well paid or world famous movie stars and award-winning directors may be, they're still human, which means they make as many mistakes as anyone. Usually, those mistakes are left on the cutting room floor or offered to fans on blooper reels for a look behind the scenes and a laugh. But sometimes, those mistakes can wind up in the spotlight instead, the result of an editor and director who either never noticed or decided it was just too good to take out. But we'll let you be the judge. Here are Screen Rant's 10 movie outtakes that made it to the big screen. Star Wars. Just about every movie fan has seen the Star Wars saga at least once, but there's a good chance even die-hard fans have overlooked one of the biggest mistakes in the franchise's first movie. When Luke Skywalker succeeds in destroying the Death Star, he gets a hero's welcome back at the Rebel base. Princess Leia is so relieved she screams out Luke's name, but it isn't Leia that actor Mark Hamill calls out in response. The actors have tried to cover up the gaffe, but it's hard to miss Hamill calling out his co-star Carrie Fisher by her first name. Guardians of the Galaxy. With a cast as talented as Marvel's gang of space outlaws, some improv is to be expected. But actual accidents like star Chris Pratt dropping an all-powerful orb of universal destruction are a different story. Director James Gunn has confirmed that Chris Pratt really did drop the orb by accident, but stayed in character and finished the shot so it could still be used in the finished cut.
No problem at all.
This proves once and for all that it's nearly impossible to find where Pratt's clumsy personality ends and Peter Quill begins. Lemony Snicket's A Series of Unfortunate Events. The movie version of this novel series lived up to its name, but even in this series of unfortunate events, one happy accident made it through editing, thanks to Jim Carrey's famously quick thinking. When the movie's child stars meet their villainous uncle, he proves his career as an actor isn't limited to the stage, asking them for a second take.
Wait, let me do that one more time. Give me the line again. Quickly, while it's fresh in my mind.
But the line wasn't in the script. Carrey actually wanted to try his line again, but stayed in character when asking his co-stars. Since the strange moment fit the movie's tone, the director decided to leave it in. North by Northwest. It's considered to be one of Alfred Hitchcock's best and most parodied movies, but there's one part of North by Northwest that everyone involved would rather forget. When the star Cary Grant winds up taking a trip in the back of a police car, the actors rely on old-fashioned tricks to make the ride seem more realistic to the audience. When the driver takes a hard left, Grant slides to the right like he's supposed to, while the other policeman misses the cue completely. Grant needs to give him a push, leaving audiences to wonder how the obviously blown take was the version Hitchcock left in the final cut. Cabin in the Woods. One of the biggest laughs of this horror comedy comes when one torture technician gets to see a kill from his favorite mobster up close. The merman prop was rigged to pump out thick streams of blood as it consumed its victim. With the effect working perfectly, the crew decided they might as well let the blood tank empty out before stopping the camera. But it was only when the tank started to run dry that the flowing blood turned into erratic spraying, and every crew member began uncontrollably laughing. The tone changed immediately, and the director decided the joke was too good to leave out. Swapping gore for gag, this proved that behind-the-scenes luck can still result in movie magic. Serenity. The heroes of Joss Whedon's Firefly were up against an entire planetary alliance in this big-screen finale to the TV show, taking a suicide mission into enemy territory to get a life-or-death message to the public. But when the truth came out, even the crew's main enemy decides they shouldn't be punished. Unfortunately, the director had planned to skip over the enemy soldier standing down entirely, which meant he never even filmed the scene. Whedon got creative and used footage of the end of the shot, when he shouted cut and the actors simply lowered their weapons. It did the trick, but they weren't alone. Look closely and you'll see a crew member lowering their camera straight through the frame. The Wizard of Oz. The villain of this classic movie met her end by melting in water, but the actress got it much, much worse. When the Wicked Witch of the West makes her first exit from Munchkinland, she does so in a puff of red smoke and a burst of fire. It's a memorable effect, but also a pretty flawed one. Not only can the trapdoor letting out smoke clearly be seen opening from the set's floor, but it begins to pour out before the witch even hits her mark. So why was it left in the movie? In a later take, actress Margaret Hamilton was severely burned when the fire erupted early, taking her out of action for almost 2 months. When the actress returned, she refused any more fire stunts.
I wouldn't hear of it.
So the studio was forced to use a botched rehearsal take in the final cut. Days of Thunder. Even actors can get starstruck when working alongside megastars like Tom Cruise.
and his game was proving to be a problem even early on in his career.
Yeah, what the hell are you talking about?
Cruise played the part of NASCAR driver Cole Trickle in Days of Thunder, whose head injury led to a love affair with his character's doctor. When the couple spent the weekend with Cole's former rival Rowdy Burns, introductions are made with Rowdy's wife Jenny, but she doesn't need to be told who her husband's famous friend is.
Hi, Cole. Hey, Jenny.
Somehow her flub, and Cruise ignoring it, wound up in the finished movie. Spy Kids. It's still hard to believe that director Robert Rodriguez is responsible for mature action movies like Desperado and the family-friendly movie series Spy Kids. But it turns out that filming fewer action-packed scenes isn't necessarily that much easier. When Rodriguez was capturing an early shot of actress Carla Gugino in front of a set of mirrors, he made an unexpected cameo alongside her reflection. What should have led to a blown take and a good laugh was left intact, with Rodriguez apparently deciding his blunder was too funny to edit out. Terminator 2. Arnold Schwarzenegger may be more acclaimed for his action skills than his comedy chops these days, but in the role of the Terminator, the actor could do no wrong. He even tried a little improv. When his battle with the more powerful T-1000 in the movie's sequel left him severely damaged and losing limbs, he still managed to come to John Connor's rescue. In the script, the Terminator had no line to speak after saving John, with James Cameron simply saying that he emerges looking like he needs a vacation. After filming the scene several times, Arnold decided to give the director a laugh, turning his description into an actual line.
I need a vacation.
Marvel movies have it all. Massive set pieces, believable special effects, larger-than-life characters, and big mistakes that stick out like sore thumbs. Yeah, you heard that right. The MCU films are the closest things we have to superhero heaven. But they're not perfect. Still, it's those bloopers that prove just how funny the people behind the scenes putting these films together can be. And hey, if they're having fun behind the camera, then that's all the more reason why we have so much fun watching these movies in the theater. So, join Screen Rant as we go through these 25 unbelievable Marvel movie bloopers. 1. First up, it's Captain America Civil War. During the airport fight, the flight-friendly superheroes engage in their own scuffle in the skies. Rhodey's suit gets deactivated by a shot from Vision, a shot intended for the Falcon. It sends him free-falling into the ground. Anthony Mackie as Falcon flies over to apologize, but it took him a couple tries to stick the landing. During one take, he fell and landed face first, causing Robert Downey Jr. to break, and making us break too. Hey, something had to lighten the mood after all this infighting. 2. Unlike Velociraptors, Captain America can't seem to open doors. He may have the mightiest shield around, but in Captain America the Winter Soldier, Chris Evans spent multiple takes trying to bust through a lock on a door. The edge of his shield wasn't cutting it, however. During these takes, Scarlett Johansson's Black Widow stands behind him, unable to provide much assistance either. Apparently, they make locks stronger than vibranium. While they were eventually able to break through the door thanks to movie magic, this scene is a lesson that sometimes you should pack a pair of bolt cutters. 3. Captain America Civil War's airport battle is one of the most well-realized superhero movie fights ever. Sadly, they couldn't correctly replicate it for Spider-Man Homecoming. At the beginning of Homecoming, Peter Parker's vlog shows a recap of the battle. When Peter shows up in the footage, he says,
Hey, everyone.
Yet in Civil War, Tony Stark greets Peter first, saying,
Nice job, kid.
before Peter responds.
Thanks.
With all of Marvel's meticulous planning, you'd think they'd have caught this mistake, but maybe Peter Parker edited the vlog before he posted it. 4. The Pym particles from Ant-Man are explained not once, but twice, as having the ability to shrink space between atoms. That's all well and good, and makes all the shrinking and enlarging that happens throughout Ant-Man seem believable. But if Ant-Man's tech isn't actually shrinking the atoms themselves, then we believe that they can't possibly be changing the mass of the items, no matter how small or large they become. Which means that Ant-Man couldn't have carried that tank in his pocket unless he wanted to rip a hole through his pants. 5. Much of the Guardians of the Galaxy's success is due to its soundtrack. One big mistake, though, is the cassette tape on which Star-Lord's awesome mix plays. His mom may have passed away in 1988, but the mixtapes she's given him are Type 2 CDing 2 TDK cassette tapes. That may not ring a bell to any of you non-tape experts out there, but this particular brand of cassette was not produced and sold until 1993. Let's assume this happened because someone time-traveled and made a copy. 6. Black Panther's Denai Guerrera has achieved much success as of late, thanks to her MCU role as Okoye and her other famous role as Michonne in The Walking Dead. But those two big titles on her resume weren't enough to keep her from being upstaged by a goat. During filming, Black Panther's sidekick was given her own sidekick when a goat wandered into the frame. It's hard to control a goat, but hey, maybe we'll all look back in 20 years and say, wow, can you believe that world-famous goat got his start in Black Panther? Who'd have thunk it? 7. In the first Avengers film, the Battle of New York caused billions of dollars worth of damage to the Big Apple and many lives were sadly lost. So a dent in a car shouldn't have that much of an impact in the grand scheme of things. At one point during the battle, Thor crouches behind this dented, overturned silver car. In the next shot, though, the car's dents are gone, and while it's still overturned, there doesn't appear to be any issues. The special effects team likely failed to remember to add damage to the car in subsequent shots. 8. Kobe Smulders has comedy chops, as we know from her stint as a lead on How I Met Your Mother. Yet her role as Agent Maria Hill doesn't often allow her to go for laughs. Except in this deleted moment where Maria Hill can't handle Agent Phil Coulson's death. With a no on par with Darth Vader's at the end of Revenge of the Sith, Smulders really goes for it here, threatening to get the Avengers to, avenge his death. And quick fun fact, this blooper was used for loading screens in the LEGO Marvel Avengers video game. 9. In another moment where the actors just can't seem to keep it together while the world falls apart around them, Benedict Wong couldn't seem to match his fellow actors' sense of gravitas. In Avengers Infinity War, when Stark, Banner, Doctor Strange, and Wong meet in the Sorcerer Supreme's headquarters as Thanos hovers over New York, the assembled heroes look out past the camera, sensing the full weight of the situation. But Wong just can't seem to keep a straight face. It's nice to see that even in the face of doom, some people maintain their sense of humor. 10. Gwyneth Paltrow's Pepper Potts can do anything. Not only is she Tony Stark's ever-supportive partner, she's also a Type A time management wizard. But is she a literal wizard as well? In the first Iron Man, Pepper is seen wearing a hands-free earpiece in her ear. Then in the following shot, there's no earpiece to be seen. Did she slip it away lightning fast? Did it fall out of her ear without her noticing? Or did Stark Industries create the kind of hands-free device that stores itself away when it's not needed? Our money's on that last option. 11. In a moment that was actually played for laughs, Captain America's educational school film in Spider-Man Homecoming was one of the highlights of the movie. However, while filming this scene, Chris Evans couldn't take the situation for what it was and broke character. For some reason, Evans was unable to keep a straight face when saying to school children, the one thing that will give them an edge is a hot lunch. We have to admit there's something funny about the words hot lunch. At least it's funnier than a cold lunch. 12. Much like how in the Star Wars films, characters pronounce words differently. For instance, Lando says Han like hand instead of Han like Hans Gruber. Anyway, there was a time during the filming of Black Panther that no one could get a consensus on how to pronounce Wakanda. Both Martin Freeman and Denai Guerrera in particular had some trouble saying the country's name right, which is especially embarrassing since they should both know how to say the name of the place they spend so much time inside. 13. Iron Man 3 is one of the more divisive big-budget films in the MCU, but hey, it took risks. One thing they might not have spent their money on, however, is presidential research. When a bullet ricochets off the Iron Patriot suit inside Air Force One, it blows through a window, which seems totally believable, except for the fact Air Force One's windows are built to be bulletproof. Perhaps the Iron Patriot's armor is so powerful the bullet's speed picks up after it hits it, sending it at a strong enough velocity to blow through that window. 14. Iron Man 3 got heat from some fans for certain storytelling decisions, specifically their Mandarin fake-out. But this particular blooper with Trevor Slattery, aka Not the Mandarin, is too good to ignore. Rhodes asks Slattery to do several different accents, and actor Ben Kingsley is given an excuse to stretch his vocal muscles. While he doesn't know where South Central is,
South Central, Tyler?
Where's that?
we get to see Kingsley do an Irish, Jamaican, French, and Spanish accent before they ask him to do British, which turns the conversation on its head.
Well, I am British.
15. In the first Iron Man, Captain America's shield makes a cameo appearance. At the time, it seemed like a nice little Easter egg, and it somehow didn't give away the twist of the post-credits scene, telling us Iron Man is the start of a shared universe. The inconsistency here is that during this time, Captain America is still buried under ice, frozen in the same spot since the end of Captain America: The First Avenger, made after Iron Man. Maybe this was just a prototype shield. 16. Captain America: The First Avenger had an even bigger problem with consistency, and that stems from its use, or rather misuse, of certain flags. First, when the British flag is shown hanging outside a building, it's hanging upside down. Elsewhere at the World Expo, the flag of the Bahamas can be seen. Unfortunately, this particular flag wasn't created until the 1970s, and The movie takes place in the 40s. We love the movie, but it doesn't have the same keen eye as, say, Raiders of the Lost Ark. 17. For a guy who can transform into a nearly indestructible green beast, Bruce Banner doesn't always have the stomach for violence. At least in his normal form. That's best shown in this cut blooper from the first Avengers. While filming a shot during the Battle of New York, where the Avengers look dramatically toward the foes ahead of them, Ruffalo just goes, "Dudes, you're on your own," and bolts down the street. Hey, even the Hulk has to listen to his fight or flight instincts. 18. Despite the many small mistakes, the first Avengers is still a milestone in blockbuster filmmaking. It's just a shame they let this blooper go by too. Toward the end of the movie, Captain America rides off on a motorcycle and a tight shot shows him smiling as he goes. No matter how fast that motorcycle may be moving, however, his hair stays in place. Either he's got a whole bunch of pomade holding it together, or he was just filming the scene in front of a green screen. 19. We live in an era where minor costume mistakes and continuity issues can be fixed with a quick computer touch-up, which makes these slip-ups all the more surprising. Take this one from Iron Man 2. Ivan Vanko lies on the ground and a trail of blood dribbles from his mouth. In the next shot, however, the blood trail disappears from Ivan's mouth. Did he swallow it? Did the cops surrounding him wipe the side of his mouth? What's the deal here? 20. As the voice of Jarvis, actor Paul Bettany must have gotten a lot of practice saying verbose lines and complex technical phrases. As Vision, though, Bettany has to say these lines in a tight costume, on set, with his fellow actors. And sometimes that makes it more difficult to keep from getting tongue-tied. To see Vision, a cool, calm, and composed character, lose his ability to speak clearly changes the way we view the character.
Manipulates molecular polarity.
At least for the time being. 21. In Captain America the Winter Soldier, you'd think that the coordinates of the Triskelion would be managed perfectly. Unfortunately, that's not the case. When the Triskelion is introduced on screen with fancy little text denoting the name of the structure and its location, the coordinates are listed incorrectly. Both the latitude and longitude for S.H.I.E.L.D.'s headquarters are given as north and south. The longitude should be east and west. Unless that was just S.H.I.E.L.D. trying to keep its location secret even to the on-screen viewers. 22. In Ant-Man, the hero does battle with Darren Cross. And towards the end of the final fight, Cross pulls a Glock to Ant-Man's head. So, Ant-Man summons ants to overtake the gun in Cross's hand. The ants block the gun's hammer, and Ant-Man is able to take the upper hand. The only problem is, Cross has been holding a Glock, which doesn't have a hammer accessible on the outside of the gun. In fact, the close-up on the gun's hammer is the only shot in this sequence where the hammer's visible. Whoops. 23. Tim and Eric are like walking bloopers in their own right. They embrace comedy that's quote-unquote terrible on purpose, and they do comedy in a way that takes certain people off guard. So, when Tim Heidecker served as a tour guide in Ant-Man and the Wasp, it's probably right up much of the audience's alley, and perfect for a blooper reel. When the situation around Heidecker's character gets out of control, the actor rolls with it, and riffs so hard we'd want to be stuck on a 3-hour tour with this guy in any city.
Goobleyer.
24. Speaking of riffing, if you cast Jeff Goldblum in a movie, you can be dang sure the guy's gonna riff to his heart's content. And in a movie like Thor Ragnarok, which is just full of improv and riffing, Jeff Goldblum goes wild. Sadly, much of his lines are on the cutting room floor, but that means there's more material on the blooper reel, including some on-point ear-wiggling and some beatboxing with Tom Hiddleston. 25. This one's an oldie, and a pre-MCU era blooper to boot. But it's still topical because Spider-Man's always a topic of conversation. He may not be in tip-top Tom Holland shape, but Tobey Maguire's awesome spider-like reflexes weren't yet honed enough to save his bedroom lamp from breaking during the scene when he first tries out his new web-slinging abilities. However, when we return to Peter Parker's room, the lamp's still there, undamaged. Either this is a blooper or Aunt May's crafting skills saved the day.
Actors are under a lot of pressure to memorize every single one of their lines. It's important for production to stick to the script, but these scenes prove that some of the best stuff happens right there in the moment. Here are 10 bloopers that made movie scenes better. The Dark Knight. Fans of Christopher Nolan's Batman trilogy are hard-pressed to pick a favorite, but The Dark Knight is easily the most iconic. The film delivered on the long-anticipated big-screen return of the Joker. Heath Ledger's portrayal was haunting and complex, but also had some truly funny moments. After the Joker detonates the majority of the hospital bombs, there is one delayed blast. Apparently, even though everyone on set was aware the explosion would be a few seconds behind the others, the actor's reaction to it is genuine. And that's fair enough, since anyone else would probably have done the exact same thing. Casino Royale. With every new Bond movie, there comes a new Bond girl, and usually a handful of pretty revealing scenes. Fans had gotten used to a certain amount of scantily clad cast members, but Casino Royale flipped the script. Sort of. Well, actually, no, it didn't. But it did show us something we didn't expect. A topless James Bond emerging from the ocean. That's a move usually reserved for 007's lady friends. But when Daniel Craig ran into some sandbars while swimming ashore for one scene, he went with it, and sold hundreds of new gym memberships in the process. The Avengers. At this point, it should be clear to everyone that Robert Downey Jr. is going to do what he wants. If he's tired, he sleeps. If he's happy, he smiles. And if he's hungry, he's gonna eat, even if the cameras are rolling. The actor has a habit of squirreling snacks around the set and munching on them whenever possible. His tendency to graze was so unstoppable that the team working on the Avengers just went with it instead of even trying to stop him. Viewers might have just chalked it up as one of Tony Stark's many relatable qualities, but now that we know how it came about, we can't help but admire that level of snacking dedication. The usual suspects. No matter how different we may be from one another, most of us can agree that farts are funny, especially if they happen in the middle of something serious. The infamous lineup scene from 1995's The Usual Suspects is a prime example, except you wouldn't know that just by watching it. It seems weird that a bunch of guys standing in a criminal lineup would crack up laughing, but apparently, Benicio del Toro was letting the toots rip during filming. And now you understand why Gabriel Byrne is really covering his nose. The Lord of the Rings, The Two Towers. Carrying the ring to Mordor wasn't just hard on Frodo, even though he gets most of the credit. It crippled some of his mates as well, some more painfully than others. Viggo Mortensen goes through a lot as Aragorn, but breaking 2 toes during the filming of The Lord of the Rings, The Two Towers was the most painful. To add a little extra emotional flair, the actor booted a helmet across the set. Too bad nobody told the props department what was going to happen, because they could have switched it out with a fake that wouldn't destroy Mortensen's foot. The Lord of the Rings. Okay, so Viggo Mortensen can't catch a break. First he cracks some toes, kicking a helmet into the horizon, then he gets a real blade hurled at his face in battle. We repeat, he deflected a professionally thrown knife, heading straight for his face using his prop sword. It's not easy to see through all those prosthetics, and the thrower misjudged his target, sending that blade directly to Mortensen's face. Everyone on set agreed that it was the most badass thing they'd ever seen, and obviously that take was the one that Peter Jackson kept. Midnight Cowboy. It's a beautiful thing when an actor is so deep into their character that they become them in all situations. Dustin Hoffman is a Hollywood legend. You may not know it, but one of the most recognizable lines of dialogue,
I'm walking here! I'm walking here!
came from off the top of his head. While working on Midnight Cowboy, the actor was so into his role as Ratso that when he almost gets hit by a car while crossing the street, he berates the driver and yells with a fury that only Ratso could muster, and follows it up with a one-liner about collecting insurance money. Django Unchained. Over the course of his career, Leonardo DiCaprio has maintained a fairly diverse resume. He's Hollywood royalty and has been in some of the best films of the past decade. Yet, despite his diverse eye, there was one man the actor hadn't worked with, Quentin Tarantino. But all that changed in 2012 with DiCaprio's turn as Calvin Candy in Django Unchained. This was the first time the actor got to put himself in the villain's shoes, and he was devoted. DiCaprio got so deep into the character that when he sliced his hand open on a broken glass during an intense scene, he didn't even notice. As far as Tarantino is concerned, Real Blood is better than No Blood, and that's the take he kept. Zoolander. Since its release in 2001, Zoolander has proven to be a treasure trove of quotable moments, and was single-handedly responsible for a temporary boom in orange mocha frappuccino sales. Given how comedically talented the cast is, viewers might not be surprised that some of the scenes were off the cuff, but some of Ben Stiller's best moments happened purely by accident. The actor would occasionally forget his lines and just keep repeating himself until they came back. Ultimately, the goof turned out to be pretty in line with his character's personality, and those shots made it into the final cut. American Sniper. When American Sniper hit cinemas in 2014, it blew critics away. The subject matter is controversial, and everyone from the casual moviegoer to members of the Academy took notice. But amidst all the sadness, there is one moment that warrants a little giggle. During a particularly heartbreaking scene between the main character and his wife, actor Bradley Cooper snuggles with his baby. The infant is clearly a doll, and you can see Cooper manually moving the baby's fake arm. And that's enough to take anyone out of the moment, including the cast themselves. Cooper has made fun of the bad prop in more than one interview, but still respects the hell out of Clint Eastwood for avoiding the use of CGI. What do you think of our list? Did we miss any of your favorite bloopers that made movie scenes better? Tell us about them in the comments, and subscribe to our YouTube channel for more great videos like this one.
May I have your attention, please?
Bloopers are an inevitable part of movie making.
Like everybody else in the world, actors and everybody else involved in the movie-making process are only human. Mistakes will happen, but it goes without saying that as a general rule, most people would rather watch an actual movie than a movie's blooper reel.
Let's go get on my bike.
Okay.
However, in some cases, either when a movie is particularly bad or a blooper is particularly good, the bloopers are actually more enjoyable to watch than the movies themselves.
Oh, wow, he was having some fun.
That's what this video is all about, so enjoy it. And make sure you subscribe to our channel and join the notification squad to receive alerts every time we upload new videos. Here are 10 bloopers you would rather watch than the movie. And before we start, can you guess this movie from these emojis? Stay tuned for the answer at the end of our video.
What kind of crappy suit is this?
Spider-Man 3. 2007 Spider-Man 3 was a terrible movie, and a very poor finale to an otherwise great trilogy, and it's safe to say that watching bloopers from it is more enjoyable than watching the movie itself. There are certainly plenty of bloopers to choose from, including one classic example of an actor not being able to stop laughing.
My parents and I were just having dinner here.
Oh.
Hello, I'm Gwen Stacy.
Hi.
Star Wars Episode 1, The Phantom Menace. In 1999's heavily criticized Star Wars Episode 1, The Phantom Menace, Brian Blessed lent his unmistakable voice to Boss Nass, the leader of the Gungans, who the Jedi failed to persuade to help the people of Naboo at the start of the movie. In the scene in which he's talking to the Jedi and their allies, there's a blooper that is far more entertaining than the movie itself.
You shall all bombard. You shall all.
Hello, Daddy, Captain.
Iron Man 3. 2013's Iron Man 3 certainly isn't as bad as some people like to think it is, but it certainly isn't one of the Marvel Cinematic Universe's better quality or more entertaining offerings, which is why it's fair to argue that the movie's bloopers raise more of a smile than the movie itself.
Hit him! Hit it! Ha! Heartbreaker, will you help? What's his name?
Red Snapper.
We always cover the ass.
House of Wax. Any movie that has Paris Hilton acting in it is bound to be terrible. 2005's horror, House of Wax, saw her in one of the most prominent roles and was, unsurprisingly, not an exception to that rule. It was a ridiculous movie that made the original 1953 movie of the same name look like a masterpiece, so it's definitely more enjoyable to watch the bloopers. The Hangover. 2009's The Hangover is undoubtedly a great movie. It remains the highest grossing R-rated comedy of all time, and with good reason, because it's hilarious. However, some of the outtakes are even funnier to watch, with the cast's uncontrollable laughing being infectious.
You want some hot chocolate? Like, just get me.
There. Okay. Okay.
Daddy Daycare. Daddy Daycare is one of those movies where the bloopers are quite literally the best part about it. The 2003 comedy, and we use that word very loosely, incorporates some of its gag reel into the credits at the end, and it's genuinely more entertaining than the previous hour and a half you have to endure before it.
I want a peanut butter jelly sandwich.
Peanut butter and jelly sandwich.
Yeah, after this scene.
If I give you...
What's so funny?
Movie 43. Movie 43 is an absolutely awful movie. In spite of its almost unbelievably large and strong ensemble cast, it is quite literally one of the worst movies ever made. Like Daddy Daycare, it features some of its bloopers in its closing credits.
I'm just gonna go to the bathroom, is that right?
I can't fucking.
Men in Black 2. 2002's Men in Black 2 was undoubtedly the worst of the Men in Black movies, but it was still pretty enjoyable. That being said, with Tommy Lee Jones being such a straight-laced character in the franchise, seeing him mess up and subsequently laugh was always going to be more enjoyable than watching this movie as a full feature.
Bend down, and Derek, really come up really quickly when I say action.
It's not Derek.
Anchorman 2: The Legend Continues. Anchorman 2: The Legend Continues continued in 2013, where 2004's Anchorman: The Legend of Ron Burgundy left off. While it lacked the originality of the first movie, it was genuinely every bit as funny. A particularly funny moment came in the form of Paul Rudd's Brian Fantana showcasing his condom collection to the rest of the main cast in his office.
What's the nickname for your penis when you were a po' boy?
Aaron Neville.
Oh, I thought it was Fat Tuesday.
Coney Island whitefish. In case you want to schmear.
Oh, good lord.
Oh, God.
In case you feel like schmearing all over your lady. Go on. Give her a pap smear. God, that's horrible.
Suicide Squad. Suicide Squad was one of the biggest cinematic disappointments of 2016. It seemed to have a great cast and a unique concept for a comic book movie, but something just didn't click. That being said, the cast seemed to have a lot of fun on set, not least because of a lot of fun bloopers. Those bloopers are a lot easier to watch than the contrived movie itself.
Jesus.
Sorry. It was over top.
If I could see my actual reflection, it would have.
Thanks for watching our video about 10 bloopers you would rather watch than the movie. What other bloopers were more entertaining than the movie they occurred in? And the answer to the movie emoji is, did you get the right answer? Let us know in the comments below, and don't forget to like the video and subscribe to Screen Rant for more fun videos like this one.
Sometimes getting it wrong can be so right. At least, that's what these filmmakers thought. While bloopers often make a funny gag reel at the end of a movie, sometimes they're just so perfect that they make their way into the movie itself. Bloopers can lead to amazing moments of improvisation, or just be so damn coincidental that they work so well that you didn't even realize they were a blooper in the first place. Whether it be a strangely metaphorical outtake, a brilliant one-liner, or a moment of sheer agony, sometimes when the bloopers hit the editing room, they're just too good to cut. In this video, we will take a look at some of the best bloopers in movie history and how these gaffes turned into some of our favorite scenes.
Why do I smell baby oil?
The Rock is well known for his brilliant insults and one-liners, with the famous behind-the-scenes candy-ass feud with Vin Diesel being an example of this. But it wasn't just when the cameras weren't rolling with the Fast and the Furious where The Rock honed his razor-sharp comebacks. While Tyrese and Ludacris are known for bringing the comic relief to the franchise, in one scene, The Rock left them both stunned. When The Rock's character Hobbs enters a scene, Roman, played by Tyrese, quips to Jordana Brewster's Mia,
"Hey Mia, you better hide your baby oil,"
which probably refers to the ridiculous amount of baby oil The Rock and Vin Diesel reportedly used during their first fight scene in the franchise. However, The Rock went off script and came back with the priceless line,
"I'm just playing." "You better hide that big ass forehead." I was just joking. Whatever.
Both Ludacris and Tyrese were surprised by the line, causing Ludacris to break character and do an actual spit take while Tyrese stood there stunned. The filmmakers liked the reaction so much they kept it in, cementing it as one of the best comebacks in movie history. Oh, it's a classic. After the events of both Infinity War and Endgame, we know the true power of the Infinity Stones and the ultimate destruction they can cause. So if you ever get your hands on one, it's probably best you be careful with it. But someone didn't tell Peter Quill that in Guardians of the Galaxy, as when he goes to hand the orb containing the Power Stone to the Collector, he drops it on the floor and then pops back up as if nothing happened. Yeah, not a smart move. What makes it funnier is that it was a total accident.
Chris is about to drop the orb. This is totally real. This was not planned. Chris actually dropped the orb. And then he, of course, recovered it with humor, but he actually dropped the orb. That was not planned at all.
The gaffe felt perfect for the scene and felt totally in character for Star-Lord, and so unsurprisingly, they decided to keep it in the final cut. The Lord of the Rings trilogy is known for its amazing cinematography and use of foreboding to set the tone. As an example of this in Two Towers, as war with Isengard looms, Éowyn stares off into the distance, pondering the future as the camera pulls wide to show off a cinematic view of the barren landscape in front of her. But filming outside on location often comes with its own set of problems, as we see one of the flagpoles flap viciously in the wind until eventually the flag rips off the pole entirely entirely and flies away. This was completely by accident, but Jackson loved the shot and the metaphor it served and decided to keep it in. Two Towers also gave us another great blooper turned iconic scene. When Aragorn finds the remains of the Uruk-hai and believes that Merry and Pippin are dead, actor Viggo Mortensen turns and kicks a helmet in frustration and falls to his knees. This was actually a moment of improvisation by Mortensen, but he kicked the helmet so hard that he ended up breaking his toes and screaming in pain, making that cry of agony very real. Talk about method acting. The police lineup in The Usual Suspects is one of the most iconic scenes, and one of the ones that lives on in our memory. While this scene feels like it should be serious and full of tension, we see the characters barely able to contain their laughter and goofing around. But this wasn't in the script, and nor was it the work of director Bryan Singer. It was, in fact, apparently the work of a heavy lunch. The cast had just returned from lunch and were already very giggly and tired after a long day of filming. So when actor Benicio del Toro kept farting due to his meal, the cast couldn't keep it together. Apparently, Del Toro farted through 12 takes, only increasing the laughter of the cast. Singer was apparently furious with the intention of this being a serious scene, but during editing saw the funny side and decided to keep this famous scene in all its gassy glory. Zoolander is known as one of the best comedies of the early 2000s, with plenty of gags and comedic moments in amongst the models with perfectly structured cheekbones. Centered around Ben Stiller's unintellectual male model Derek Zoolander, the movie has plenty of absurd moments, and one of the best of them came from a blooper.
So why male models?
After David Duchovny's character J.P. Pruitt gives a lengthy monologue about how male models are orchestrated to perform high-profile assassinations, going into depth why they are a perfect fit, Zoolander instantly gives his response,
"But why male models?"
which was the question he had already asked. While this might seem like a scripted moment to show Zoolander's stupidity and lack of comprehension, in actuality, Stiller had just forgotten the next line, so he decided to repeat his first line instead. Duchovny, who wasn't expecting this response and looked taken aback, stayed in character, improvising his next lines, and the end result is so funny that it stayed in the final cut.
You serious? I just told you that a moment ago.
While we may know Indy is the Raider of the Lost Ark, we forget that this title should also go to his French counterpart René Belloq. While Belloq is the perfect antagonist for Indy, eagle-eyed fans remember him for one strange scene. In the scene where Indy ambushes Belloq and the Nazis, as Belloq talks to Indy, a fly lands on the actor Paul Freeman's face. The fly then goes into his mouth and flies out, but due to the choppy filming, we don't see the fly leave, and it looks like Freeman ate the fly. While Freeman felt the fly, he thought no one noticed, but they did, and now it goes down in history as a funny, albeit weird blooper. However, that wasn't the only big blooper in Raiders of the Lost Ark. Big Indy fans will know this one. Initially, the gun versus sword fight scene in Raiders was supposed to be a huge fight sequence, but when Ford felt ill during filming, instead of filming the tiring sequence which involved his whip, it was replaced with the genius piece of improv that we all know, pulling out his gun and shooting the sword wheeler. That's why you don't bring a sword to a gunfight. Donald Glover is a man of many talents. Writer, singer, musician, he can do it all. But sometimes even he makes mistakes, with one of his best blunders coming during the filming of The Martian. Glover recounted the funny moments during his appearance on Conan, telling the talk show host that director Ridley Scott only does 3 to 4 takes before moving on, so you have to get it right quickly. This made Glover nervous, but reportedly he nailed his take, spitting into a wastebasket before doing some stage business. But when he went to leave, his nerves got the better of them, and when he got up to walk, he slipped and fell to the ground.
I need more coffee.
Are you alright?
Fine.
Glover stayed in character and ran with the moment, quickly shaking himself off and continuing with the scene. Scott liked the moment so much he kept it in there, giving some comic relief in an otherwise dramatic movie. Quentin Tarantino's 2012 film Django Unchained is known for, among many things, its amazing performances. One of the most captivating performances is that of Leonardo DiCaprio as the villainous Calvin Candide, owner of Candyland, a slave-ran plantation in the Deep South where Django must try and free his wife from. As Candy hosts Django and Dr. King Schultz for dinner, we see the depths of his cruelty and evil nature as he goes on a long, racist monologue. But DiCaprio might have got more than he bargained for when he slammed his hand down on the table right onto a glass. While DiCaprio thought it was a prop glass made out of sugar glass, it turned out to be very real, and the glass cut deep into his hand, leaving it seriously lacerated. But Tarantino, sensing a great moment and not afraid of showing blood in his movies, excitedly kept the camera rolling. DiCaprio didn't break character, barely flinching, and even starts rubbing the real blood on Kerry Washington's face, leaving her genuinely disgusted. Django Unchained wasn't the only movie involving a huge blooper for Quentin Tarantino, with his 2015 movie Hateful Eight having a less bloody but far more expensive blooper in the final cut. Throughout the movie, Kurt Russell's John Ruth and Jennifer Jason Leigh's Daisy Domergue are constantly at each other's throats, and one constantly trying to antagonize the other. In one scene, Domergue starts playing a guitar to irritate Ruth, and in a fit of rage, Ruth grabs the guitar and smashes it to pieces. The issue is that the guitar in question was an almost priceless 19th century Martin guitar on loan from the Martin guitar and was a rare artifact. So the initial plan was to quickly cut and switch to a prop guitar. However, Russell obviously didn't get the memo and instead ended up smashing a $40,000 guitar to smithereens. Lee's shocked reaction is real, and Russell was left feeling guilty for his part in destroying this piece of history. Unsurprisingly, the Martin Museum have vowed never to loan any of their artifacts to a film production again. Villeneuve's Blade Runner 2049, the long-awaited sequel to the 80s movie, is known for its amazing cinematography, unique story, and by bringing back Harrison Ford's famous character Deckard. Excitement mounts when we see Ryan Gosling's Agent K meeting Deckard for the first time, as it culminates into a punching match with the blows looking all too real. That might be because one of them was real. As the two characters traded blows, with 79 out of 80 punches missing like they were supposed to, Harrison Ford got carried away with one and landed his fist right on Baby Goose's face. And you can see that in the final cut. In a blink and you'll miss it moment, you can see the exact moment where Ford makes contact and his genuine shocked reaction. He later said that was the face of, "Oh shit, I'm in deep doo-doo," which summarizes it perfectly. Thankfully, Gosling took it like a champ, and the two laugh about it to this day. Although it probably wasn't very funny at the time. I mean, it is his moneymaker. He's a Hollywood pretty boy, Ford. You gotta be more careful.
What questions?
Be sure to subscribe to Screen Rant for this and more amazing content. Thank you so much, guys, and we'll see you next time.